All of that brush material was sitting inside of this motor. Okay, so today's video is going to be on the E60 M5 and the E92 M3 actuators and how you can actually prevent them from failing, and how everyone is pretty much wrong when it comes to what they say causes these to fail. And these actuators are kind of proof in a sense, because one of them was replaced, and you can see the date label. It's 1709-2015, and this one is 2709-06. And these actuators are pulled from the same car, and they're from a 195,000 mile car that I currently track at the moment. And what I wanted to discuss was how the gears are actually not the failing point, and how the DC motor actually causes the boards to fail more so than anything else. So I have a track day tomorrow, so my main thing is to get these fixed, or at least do the preventative maintenance, so at least I can make sure that everything is good. So let's get started on tearing these down. And to prove that these have never been opened up before, and that this is actually an original, is a little type of a kind of security seal in a sense on this. And what we have to do in order to make sure that we can take these off is you grab a little cutter and you snap that off, and it becomes a little pin that can go through the hole. Okay, once I take some torque off of it, slide right out, and you can see the gear wear. And the gear wear is pretty substantial, but that's not going to stop this actuator from running. It actually will just continue running, and it's not that big of a deal. So the main failure item is actually this DC motor. What it does is it actually causes some resistance issues with the actuator, and then it ends up shorting this board. And there's little MOSFETs on there, and it'll end up either burning them out, and I don't know the exact science behind it, or at least how much amps and wattage that it takes and what kind of issues are happening. But because the brushes are wearing, there's nowhere for the material to go, so it ends up sitting inside of the motor. So what we're gonna have to end up doing is using brake clean. We're gonna go ahead and take this motor out and clean it, and I'll show you guys how much of the carbon brushes actually comes out of this thing and why it causes an issue. Next, to remove the DC motor, we're gonna end up actually having to smack this housing against a piece of wood, and then that'll help us get the motor out. And you can immediately see that the black is all that carbon that's coming from inside the housing. And actually, here's one interesting thing. This is from the second actuator. I decided to pull it apart and do this one. You can actually see the carbon brush is quite a bit higher, and the casing actually looks quite a bit different. But this is from 2015, by the way. But quite a bit of carbon came out of this one too. So this one was probably on its way to failure as well. Okay, so this is actually footage of just the reassembly with grease on the gears, how I do it after everything, just to prevent the gears from wearing more. But what I wanted to discuss was that if you think about the issue, the DC motor is more than likely the culprit rather than the gears, because the gears honestly don't make sense. The motor was designed to sense if there's an overload, and it was designed to sense a lot of things, so I don't understand how that could actually be the issue. The DC motor being problematic makes more sense just due to the fact that with excessive carbon buildup, or excess brush material being inside the housing, you could actually end up with shorts inside of the housing, or different varying variations, and then fry the electrical components that are inside of the board. So if you think about it, it doesn't make sense for an actuator to work for 10 plus years, 12 plus years, and always fry around 60,000 miles, 70,000 miles, 80,000 miles, but in my case, very lucky with the extended mileage, but it could depend on use. But more than likely, most vehicles see 60 to 70K. So if you consider what's happening, it doesn't make sense for a transistor to be really the failure, considering everything else on the car runs on probably the same transistors. So just put it in that way. I would recommend cleaning your actuators probably every 60 to 50, 40,000 miles. It's relatively easy to do, and it will prevent you from having to spend a lot of money on replacement parts that wouldn't necessarily need to be replaced. Well, thank you for watching. Have a great one.